A fine rain was falling as Helena arrived at the hospital, her heart still racing. The smell of disinfectant, the sound of monitors, and the silence of the hallways created a grim melody. The doctor didn't need to say a word. His look said it all. In that instant, her world split in two. Outside, a little boy was crying, unable to understand what the word death truly meant. In the days that followed, the house fell silent. The pictures on the walls seemed to watch them, silent witnesses to a love that had been cut short. Helena, only 21 years old, felt lost. But when she looked at her 6-year-old brother, she knew she couldn't give up. Her pain turned into purpose. "I will take care of you, Gabriel. I promise." Time moved slowly that first year. Every meal, every night spent tending to his fevers, every forgotten school notebook was a reminder that she was now everything he had. Sometimes she cried in secret, afraid he might see her as weak. Other times she made herself smile just so he would believe the world could still be a good place. The neighbors helped as best they could. Mrs. Lourdes, an older woman with white hair and steady hands, would bring them soup and words of comfort. "You are strong, girl," she would say. Helena wanted to believe her, but every time she saw the innocence in Gabriel's eyes, she felt the true weight of the burden she carried. The years that followed were marked by quiet sacrifices. Helena left college to work at a local school, making sure her brother had food and an education. The bills were always hard to pay, but the love between them was enough. She was the one who woke him up, made his meals, helped with his homework, and wiped away his tears. He was her reason and her purpose. On Gabriel's 10th birthday, she bought a simple cake and sang to him by herself as he drummed on the table with his utensils. "You're going to do great things, my love," she said, touching his face. "But never forget where you came from." Gabriel smiled, not yet understanding the weight of those words. As time passed, the house that once echoed with silence began to fill with sounds. Laughter, homework discussions, the guitar he learned to play from online videos. Helena would listen and feel a sense of pride, like a mother watching her child blossom. But behind all that love, there was a shadow. Sometimes she wondered what would become of her once he grew up. What would be left of her when her brother no longer needed her protection? That question became a quiet but deep wound. One night, after Gabriel had fallen asleep, Helena looked up at the stars and whispered, "Mom, Dad, am I doing this right?" The answer came on the soft breeze through the window, carrying the distant sound of a guitar. And for a moment, she allowed herself to believe it, that all of it, the pain, the effort, the love, would be worth it.
Before we go on with this story, tell me something. Have you ever loved someone so much that you lost yourself in the process? If you've ever felt that way, then subscribe to the channel, because the stories I tell are about hearts that love too much and end up paying the price. The years brought change, but no rest. Helena woke up before the sun, made coffee, and laid out Gabriel's school clothes. She worked all day and still found the energy to help him with his homework. Her body was tired, but her heart felt warm every time he smiled. Love was the fuel that kept her going. Gabriel grew into a cheerful, smart, and curious boy. He loved music, stories, and imagining the world beyond the mountains that surrounded their small town. Sometimes, Helena would watch him humming to himself and feel her chest tighten. There was something special in him, something that deserved to be seen beyond those hills. One Saturday morning, while doing laundry, she heard the sound of a guitar coming from his room. The melody was simple, but it touched her soul. "Where did you learn that?" she asked. Gabriel just shrugged, smiling. "YouTube." She laughed, surprised by how easily it came to him. It was in that moment she understood. Her brother's talent was real. From that day on, Helena did everything she could to encourage him. She worked extra hours, saved every spare coin, and even sold an old ring that belonged to their mother to buy him a better guitar. When she gave it to him, he jumped into her arms, crying with happiness. "You're the best sister in the world." Those words were the greatest gift she could have received. His school performances began. Gabriel charmed everyone with his voice and presence. Helena watched proudly, clapping with tears in her eyes. Every round of applause felt like confirmation she was managing to give her brother a better future. As time went on, people in town started talking about the boy's talent. "That kid is going places," they'd say. Helena would smile, but she'd feel a chill in her stomach. What if the world out there changed him? What if he forgot about her? One Sunday night, while he was asleep, she flipped through an old notebook and found a sentence she had written years before. "To care for someone is to give them your heart, even if one day they walk away." The words made her cry. She knew that one day Gabriel would leave, and deep down she already felt that the love between them would be tested. Still, she chose to believe that blood ties can withstand anything, even time. And with that faith, she fell asleep, not knowing that the future was already preparing to test that belief in the cruelest way possible. Gabriel's teenage years arrived, filled with restlessness and big dreams. He spent hours locked in his room, playing guitar, writing lyrics, and singing with all his soul. Helena watched from a distance, amazed by her brother's gift. Sometimes she'd catch herself smiling, imagining him in the future, shining on stages far away.
One day, the school announced a talent show. Gabriel was determined to participate, and Helena sewed a new outfit for him by hand, even though she was tired from work. "You're going to be amazing, my love," she said, fixing his collar before he walked on stage. The gym was packed, and when he started to sing, the room fell silent. Gabriel's voice was sweet and strong, filled with emotion. Helena cried quietly, her heart bursting with pride. When the host announced the winner, the gym erupted. It was Gabriel. The whole town was cheering for him, and she felt that all the sacrifices of those years were finally paying off. The win brought him attention. A local producer approached them, praising the young man's talent and promising to help him enter a bigger competition in the capital. Helena hesitated, nervous about the unknown, but Gabriel insisted, his eyes shining. "Please, sis, let me try." That night, she prayed in silence. She wanted to protect him, but she also knew she couldn't hold him back. The world was calling, and the boy she had raised was starting to want to fly. Fear and pride mixed in her chest like a storm of conflicting feelings. In the days leading up to the trip, Helena carefully prepared everything: his clothes, snacks, documents, and the guitar that was almost like a good luck charm. When it was time to say goodbye, she hugged him tightly. "Be whoever you want to be, but never forget who taught you how to dream." Gabriel smiled and promised. As the bus pulled away, Helena stood on the sidewalk, watching until it disappeared down the road. A single tear rolled down her cheek, but her heart was full of hope. She believed their love would be enough to keep them connected, no matter the distance. What she didn't know was that on that very bus, Gabriel would receive a message that would change the course of their lives and test everything she had built. The capital felt like a different world. Lights, skyscrapers, and people rushing past in every direction. Gabriel was fascinated, while Helena tried to hide her discomfort. They checked into a small hotel and went straight to the venue for the competition. The place was buzzing, full of cameras, microphones, and promises. It was there that they met Rafaela, a charismatic and self-assured talent manager. She approached Gabriel with a measured smile. "You have a rare spark. I can help you shine even brighter." Helena was suspicious right away, but her brother seemed captivated. During the rehearsal days, Rafaela became a constant presence. She helped, she guided, and little by little,
She pushed Helena out of the decision-making process. "Let me handle this," she'd say, with a subtly authoritative tone. Helena tried to step in, but she was ignored, met with a look of disdain disguised as kindness. On the night of the performance, Gabriel took the stage with confidence. He sang his heart out and received a standing ovation. Helena cried in the audience, moved and proud. When the host announced the winner, the gym erupted. It was Gabriel. The whole town was cheering for him, and she felt that all the sacrifices of those years were finally paying off. The win brought him attention. A local producer approached them, praising the young man's talent and promising to help him enter a bigger competition in the capital. Helena hesitated, nervous about the unknown, but Gabriel insisted, his eyes shining. "Please, sis, let me try." That night, she prayed in silence. She wanted to protect him, but she also knew she couldn't hold him back. The world was calling, and the boy she had raised was starting to want to fly. Fear and pride mixed in her chest like a storm of conflicting feelings. In the days leading up to the trip, Helena carefully prepared everything: his clothes, snacks, documents, and the guitar that was almost like a good luck charm. When it was time to say goodbye, she hugged him tightly. "Be whoever you want to be, but never forget who taught you how to dream." Gabriel smiled and promised. As the bus pulled away, Helena stood on the sidewalk, watching until it disappeared down the road. A single tear rolled down her cheek, but her heart was full of hope. She believed their love would be enough to keep them connected, no matter the distance. What she didn't know was that on that very bus, Gabriel would receive a message that would change the course of their lives and test everything she had built. The capital felt like a different world. Lights, skyscrapers, and people rushing past in every direction. Gabriel was fascinated, while Helena tried to hide her discomfort. They checked into a small hotel and went straight to the venue for the competition. The place was buzzing, full of cameras, microphones, and promises. It was there that they met Rafaela, a charismatic and self-assured talent manager. She approached Gabriel with a measured smile. "You have a rare spark. I can help you shine even brighter." Helena was suspicious right away, but her brother seemed captivated. During the rehearsal days, Rafaela became a constant presence. She helped, she guided, and little by little she pushed Helena out of the decision-making process. "Let me handle this," she'd say, with a subtly authoritative tone. Helena tried to step in, but she was ignored, met with a look of disdain disguised as kindness. On the night of the performance, Gabriel took the stage with confidence. He sang his heart out and received a standing ovation. Helena cried in the audience, moved and proud. When he won the competition, Rafaela was the first to run on stage and hug him. For a moment, Helena felt something break inside her. Something invisible, but very real.
In the days that followed, things moved quickly. Contracts, invitations, interviews. Rafaela spoke for Gabriel, making decisions on his behalf, while Helena watched from the sidelines, feeling out of place. When she tried to talk to him, he answered with impatience. "Sis, you don't understand this world. Just trust me on this." Helena swallowed her pride. She wanted to believe that Rafaela truly had his best interests at heart. But as the glow of his success grew brighter, the distance between the two siblings grew wider. Their phone calls became brief, his visits rare. She saw her brother only through a screen, smiling, confident, and feeling further away with each passing day. One day, while turning on the television, Helena saw Gabriel being interviewed. The reporter asked about his journey, and he answered with a smile. "Everything I've achieved, I did through my own hard work. I raised myself." The words pierced her heart like a blade. The remote control slipped from her hand.
The silence in the room was deafening. For the first time, she felt the love that had sustained her beginning to crumble. And that night, for the first time in many years, she didn't say her prayers before bed. She just cried, silently, so the world wouldn't hear the pain of someone who had loved too much. Time passed, and with it came more contracts, travels, and glamour. Rafaela now lived in the capital, surrounded by influential people, and he rarely called home. When he did, it was always in a rush. "I'm fine, sis. I'll call you back later, okay?" Helena pretended it didn't matter, but every cut-short call left an echo of emptiness inside her. The photos on social media showed a confident young man, always smiling next to Rafaela. The expensive clothes, the elegant dinners, and the public praise seemed to have created a new version of Gabriel, one she barely recognized. Helena, on the other hand, kept to the same routine: school, home, and memories. On cold nights, she still kept his room tidy, as if he might walk back in at any moment. The old guitar remained leaning in the corner, covered by a thin layer of dust. Sometimes she would sit on the edge of the bed and run her fingers over the strings, trying to feel some trace of her brother's presence. One night, she received an invitation to his first major concert. Helena was thrilled and spent days preparing the nicest outfit she owned. She arrived at the theater early, sat in the second row, and watched with her heart full of pride. When Gabriel walked on stage, the lights embraced him. He seemed untouchable. After the show, she tried to see him backstage, but security stopped her. "I'm his sister," she said, her voice trembling. The guard, looking apologetic, replied, "I'm sorry, ma'am. Authorized personnel only." Elena stood there, watching the doors close. Inside, she could hear her brother laughing, surrounded by camera flashes and applause. That night, she walked home alone, the distant sound of the crowd chanting his name still in her ears. Every step echoed as a cruel reminder that the boy she had raised now lived in another world, a world where she no longer had a place.
Back at home, standing before the mirror, Helena looked at her own reflection and whispered, "Maybe he needs to forget in order to keep growing." But the mirror didn't answer. It only reflected a tired woman trying to justify the unjustifiable. From that day on, Helena stopped calling him. She decided to wait for him to reach out to her. But waiting, much like love, can turn into silence, and that silence can become a distance too great to cross. The final blow came on an ordinary morning. Helena was drinking coffee when she heard the sound of her neighbor's television. It was Gabriel, in a national interview. Smiling and polished, he was talking about his humble past and his journey to success. "I've always been independent. Since I was little, I've had to fend for myself." The mug slipped from her hands and shattered on the floor. The hot coffee spread like a brown stain, but what truly burned was inside her. "By yourself?" she murmured, unable to believe it. Each word seemed to erase years of sacrifice, sleepless nights, jobs she'd given up, and dreams she'd put on hold. In the days that followed, the news spread through their small town. "Did you hear what Gabriel said?" the neighbors would ask, with awkward looks. Helena pretended not to care, but inside a part of her was dying. She stopped watching TV, stopped checking social media, and avoided any conversation about him. Even so, life pushed her forward. She kept teaching, though without the same joy. Her students noticed her sadness, and Mrs. Lourdes, ever watchful, tried to comfort her. "When you love someone, my dear, sometimes you have to let them get lost so they can find themselves." Helena would just nod, not really believing it.
Weeks later, a letter arrived in the mail. An invitation to the launch party for Gabriel's new album, titled Reborn from My Own Ashes. The title felt like a stab in the heart. Still, she went. She watched from afar, amid camera flashes and screams, as her brother sang songs about overcoming adversity and finding freedom. At the end of the show, Rafaela gave a speech. Gabriel is proof that true love comes from the courage to be who you are. The audience applauded. Helena stood up, walked out in silence, and made her home in the rain. Her tears mixed with the cold drops, and the world seemed to mock all she had given. Once back home, she opened a drawer and found his old guitar. The strings were rusty, but she held it carefully, as if it were still sacred. Then she whispered into the emptiness, "You might forget what I did for you, Gabriel, but I will never forget what you did to me." That night marked the end of an era, the era of hope. The love that had once sustained her was now beginning to turn into a scar. It was an ordinary afternoon when the phone rang. Gabriel's voice, cold and matter-of-fact, sounded from the other end. "Sis, I'm selling the house." For a moment, Helena thought she had heard wrong. "Our house?" she asked, her breath catching. He sighed impatiently. "Yes, it's old, falling apart. There's no point in holding on to it."
The ground seemed to drop out from under her. That house wasn't just walls and a roof. It was the home that held the scent of her parents, the echoes of childhood laughter, and the memory of the promises she had made at their funeral. "You can't do this, Gabriel. This house is our history." A sharp silence came from the other end of the line. "History doesn't pay the bills, sis. I need to move on." In the days that followed, Helena tried to convince him to change his mind. She wrote letters, sent messages, even tried to contact Rafaela, but no one responded. Then, one morning, she found a man measuring the windows. "I'm the real estate agent," he said. That's how she discovered the sale was already moving forward without her consent. Desperate, Helena went to see a lawyer. But he explained that Gabriel had transferred the deed into his own name using documents she had signed years ago, back when she trusted him completely. "You signed right here, Miss Helena. Legally, there's nothing that can be done." The lawyer's voice sounded like a final judgment. That night, she sat on the porch and watched the sunset behind the mountains. The colors seemed sadder. Every corner of the house held a memory. The chalk mark on the wall showed Gabriel's height, the worn rug where their parents used to dance, the smell of coffee that would never be the same again. When Gabriel showed up days later for a quick visit, Helena tried to talk to him. "Why are you doing this to me?" He looked away. "This isn't about you. It's just a property." She let out a humorless laugh. "A property? This house was all we had left." He just shrugged, unmoved. "You need to learn to let things go." Those words cut deeper than any knife. Helena felt the love inside her collapse, turning into something bitter. For the first time, she didn't see the boy she had raised. She saw a stranger, a man with her brother's face, but with the heart of someone who no longer recognized her. When he left, she stood in the doorway, watching his car disappear down the road. The dust settled. The silence returned, and Helena realized this was no longer Gabriel's home. It was just the tomb of what love used to be. The sale was finalized within weeks. Helena received an envelope with a portion of the money, along with a brief note for a fresh start. No signature, no apology, just an empty gesture that reeked of guilt. She spent days packing up a lifetime into boxes. Every object carried an emotional weight. The quilt her mother had made, Gabriel's old guitar, the faded photos of simple birthday celebrations. When the moving truck arrived, she stood frozen in the doorway, unable to take that first step. The driver, losing patience, asked, "Are we doing this or not, ma'am?"
And then, with a heavy heart, she answered, "We're doing it."
The new house was small, cold, and soulless. Helena tried to adapt, but the emptiness seemed to fill every space. She stopped going out, stopped smiling, stopped singing. At school, her students noticed the light was gone from her eyes. "Are you sad, teacher?" they asked. She answered with a weak smile. "Just tired."
One evening, Mrs. Lourdes appeared with soup and comfort. "My dear, some loves have to die for us to be reborn." Helena didn't answer. She just cried silently, her face buried in her hands. These were old tears, built up over time, coming from an era when loving someone meant erasing herself. Months passed, and news about Gabriel reached her through newspapers and the internet. His success continued. His songs played on every radio station, and photos of him with Rafaela were splashed across magazines. But for Helena, it all served as a cruel reminder that her love had become fuel for his fame. In the dead of one night, alone, she picked up Gabriel's old guitar. The strings were loose, but she tried to play anyway. The notes came out of tune, sad and broken, just like her. "You took everything from me, Gabriel, even the sound of our home." It was that night that Helena fainted for the first time. Her body gave in to the weight on her soul. When she woke up in the hospital, a nurse remarked, "You need to take care of yourself." She simply replied, "I don't know how anymore." And as she stared at the white ceiling, a certainty was born amid the pain. If her love had built him, then perhaps now love for herself was the only thing that could save her. The envelope of money sat on the table for weeks, untouched. Helena looked at it as if it were an open wound. She knew that gift was the price of her own dignity. One day, she worked up the courage to go to the bank to deposit the amount. It was there she happened to overhear the manager comment, "Your brother was quick. He got the house documentation sorted out in record time." Something stirred inside her. "Documentation?" she asked, disguising the tremor in her voice. The manager, unsuspecting, explained that Gabrielle had presented old signatures, including one of hers. "The notarization is right here." Helena felt the floor drop away. She had never signed anything related to the sale. That night, she rummaged through old boxes until she found a folder of papers she'd kept for years. There was her signature, identical to the one the manager had shown her. But something was wrong. The date was from a period when she had been sick, bedridden, unable to sign anything. The truth hit her like a punch. Gabrielle had forged her documents. For days, Helena moved through life in a daze. She went to work, came home, ate little, and slept even less. Sometimes she caught herself talking aloud. "He couldn't have done this. He couldn't have." But reality doesn't change just because you deny it. The evidence was right there, cold and unyielding, as hard as the man Gabriel had become. Mrs. Lourdes tried to advise her. "My child, justice is a bitter medicine. It heals, but it's painful to swallow." Helena knew that reporting her brother would mean destroying him, but staying silent would mean destroying what was left of herself. It was an impossible choice. One afternoon, she printed out the evidence and placed it all inside a blue folder. She stared at the envelope for hours until the sunset turned the paper golden. This wasn't just a set of documents. It was the weight of an entire lifetime of betrayed sacrifices.
When the phone rang, she answered without enthusiasm. It was a reporter asking for an interview. "We'd like to speak with Gabriel's sister to learn what your relationship was like." Helena took a deep breath and replied, "He's already told his version. Mine doesn't matter anymore." But after she hung up, something inside her shifted. Maybe, deep down, it still did matter, at least to her. Helena stayed up all night, sitting at the table with the evidence laid out before her. The clock read 3 a.m. when she made her decision. She would confront him, not for revenge, but because she deserved answers. She got ready at dawn and took the first bus to the capital. The trip was long and quiet, as if time itself were testing her courage. When she arrived, the building where Gabriel lived stood like a monument to arrogance. Mirrored glass, an imposing lobby, luxury cars in the garage. The security guard recognized her from old photos. "You're his sister, aren't you? You can go up." She nodded, trying to steady her nerves. The door opened after a long moment. Gabriel appeared barefoot in a bathrobe, with dark circles under his distant eyes. "Sis?" he asked, surprised. Helena held the blue folder tightly against your chest. "We need to talk." He gave a half smile. "If this is about money, relax. I already sent you your share." She took a deep breath. "This isn't about money. It's about respect. You forged my signature." His smile vanished. "What are you talking about?" Helena opened the folder and placed the papers on the table. "This." The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. Gabriel looked away, rubbing the back of his neck. I just wanted to get it over with. You always take too long to make decisions." "You stole from me, Gabrielle," she cried, her voice choked. "You stole our parents' house. You stole what was left of them, of me, of us." He tried to explain, but the words came out jumbled. "You don't get it, sis. This world moves fast. You either adapt or you get left behind." Helena felt a knot form in her throat. "I taught you to be a human being, not a product." Tears streamed down her face without her permission. Gabrielle, unable to meet her gaze, simply said, "You're right. I did choose. And now I choose to stop." Without another word, she walked out. Gabrielle stood motionless, watching the door close, unaware that in that moment he had lost much more than a sister. He had lost the only person who had ever loved him without asking for anything in return. A few weeks passed after the confrontation. Helena returned to her quiet routine, trying to bring order to what was left of her life. She thought it would all end there, that time would simply heal the wounds. But fate, as always, had other plans.
On a Monday morning, as she arrived at the school, she saw a crowd gathered around the gate, cell phones in hand, curious faces. "It's about your brother, teacher," a student shouted. Helena felt her stomach turn. She took out her phone and opened the news. Gabriel Marias accused of contract fraud and document forgery. The article detailed everything: the house sale, the fake papers, the signatures, the same case she had discovered. Someone had leaked the evidence, but it wasn't her. Social media exploded. Rafaela disappeared, the record label suspended his contract, and fans were divided between anger and sympathy. Helena turned off her phone, her heart racing. Part of her felt relief, another part, guilt. She hadn't wanted revenge, but the truth had come out anyway. That evening, the doorbell rang. It was Gabriel. His eyes were red, his face tired, his voice choked. "It was you, wasn't it?" She looked at him serene. "No, but maybe the world just did what I didn't have the courage to do." He walked in without waiting for an invitation and began pacing around the room. "You don't understand. They're going to destroy me." Helena crossed her arms. "You destroyed yourself." A heavy silence fell between them. He collapsed onto the sofa, his head in his hands. "Sis, I'm lost." For the first time in a long while, Helena saw the boy she had raised, scared, fragile, broken. But the love she felt now was different, not blind, not unconditional. It was a love that saw clearly, that hurt, and yet still endured. She sat down beside him and spoke calmly. "Life didn't destroy you, Gabriel.
It just took away the stage to see if you still knew who you were without the applause. He cried silently, like a man finally seeing his true reflection. When he stood up, he seemed smaller. "What do I do now?" he asked. Helena replied, "Tell the truth." He looked at her, desperate. "They'll hate me." She took a deep breath. It's better to be hated by strangers than loved for a lie. Gabriel left without saying goodbye, and for the first time, Helena didn't try to stop him. She knew the path to redemption isn't walked hand in hand. 2 days later, the scandal grew. TV shows, websites, and newspapers were all chasing the story. The evidence mounted, sponsors pulled out, and Gabriel's name became synonymous with downfall. At the peak of the chaos, he called a press conference. Helena watched on television, in silence. The cameras focused on his face, defeated, so different from the confident artist he'd once been. "I lied. I stole from the person who loved me most, and I've paid the price for trying to be someone I'm not." His voice trembled, his eyes filled with tears. On the other side of the screen, Helena cried without restraint. When the interview ended, her phone buzzed. A short message, just 2 words. "Need you." Without thinking, she grabbed her coat and left. The address led her to an abandoned warehouse where he used to rehearse early in his career. There was Gabriel, sitting on the floor, surrounded by old boxes and memories.
"I recorded everything," he said, showing a small voice recorder. "I want you to have it. If I ever forget who I am, make me listen to this." Helena stepped closer, tears welling in her eyes. "You don't need to. What you need is to live with what you know now." He took her hands. "Do you still love me?" The question hung in the air between them. She took her time answering. "Yes. But it's a love that's grown tired of bleeding." He bowed his head and wept. Then Helena took an envelope from her bag, the one containing the proof of the forgery. She placed it on the floor in front of him. "This is yours. The truth is yours. I don't want to carry this weight anymore." He looked up, confused. "Are you leaving me?" She answered with tenderness. "No, Gabriel. I'm just stopping trying to save you." She turned and walked toward the door. A cold wind swept through the warehouse, stirring the torn curtains. Gabriel remained there, alone, with the recorder and the envelope, 2 versions of the same story. After the press conference, the world turned its back on Gabriel. Social media became a courtroom. Fans called him a liar, and his friends disappeared. Rafaela, who had once accompanied him to every event, posted a single phrase before vanishing. Some truths arrived too late. Alone in his empty apartment, he walked among trophies and awards that now seemed to mock him. His success had been a sandcastle built on shifting sand, and now it was all collapsing. No shows, no contracts, no one. The silence felt crushing. The nights were the worst. The sound of his own heartbeat echoed too loudly. He remembered his childhood, his sister brushing his hair, the simple meals made with care, the promises she would make when the world felt too big. And he asked himself, when did he stop deserving that love? One day, without quite knowing why, he decided to return to his hometown. He got in his car and drove for hours, as if searching for a road that would lead back to when he was still pure. When he arrived, he parked in front of the old house.
but it no longer belonged to them. There was a new gate, a fresh coat of paint, and the sound of strangers' laughter coming from inside. He stood there, watching. His heart ached with a type of longing that has no cure, the longing for what we ourselves have destroyed. A little boy was playing in the yard. For a moment, he imagined it was himself, returned to a time when everything could still be saved. As the sun set, he drove away. He passed the school where Helena worked, but couldn't bring himself to go in. He stood across the street, just looking at the simple building. When the lights went out, he knew she had already gone home, and for the first time, he understood what it truly meant to be alone.
On the drive back, he pulled over to the shoulder and cried. Not the cry of a wounded artist, but of a man finally seeing his own reflection. Success had made him forget where he came from. His fall from grace made him remember who built him. As the tears fell, he whispered to the wind, "I'm sorry, sis. I didn't know what I was doing." 2 years passed. Helena moved forward with her life, but not with the same heart. She kept teaching, helping children discover their talents, and there was something sacred in that act. As if by nurturing other dreams, she was healing her own. One afternoon, while organizing sheet music in the school's music room, she heard a knock at the door. When she looked up, time seemed to stop. It was him, Gabriel. His face was thinner, his eyes tired, his smile hesitant. "Hi, sis." Helena stood frozen. The silence between them lasted longer than any explanation could. He took a step forward, his hands trembling. "I didn't come to make excuses. I just want to say I'm sorry. Truly." She sat down, taking a deep breath. "Why now?" He lowered his gaze. "Because I only now understand how I was slowly killing you, and because I'm trying to live again, but without you, it doesn't make sense." The tears came before the words. Helena watched him for a few seconds. The old anger, once so alive, no longer burned. All that remained was a weary sadness. "I loved you like a mother, Gabriel, and you loved me like a son, until the day you needed to grow up." He nodded, crying. "I grew up wrong." She stepped closer and placed a hand on his shoulder. "I forgive you, but forgiveness isn't forgetting, it's liberation." He closed his eyes and cried, and the hug that followed was quiet, sincere, and full of ghosts. When they separated, she gave a slight smile. "Do you still play guitar?" He laughed through his tears. "No, but I want to learn again." Helena pointed to the instrument leaning in the corner of the room. "Then start now." And there, in the middle of a simple classroom, two siblings rediscovered something that time and pain couldn't erase: the sound of family. Out of tune, imperfect, but real.
The years passed like leaves carried by the wind. Life moved forward, quietly, without fanfare. Helena aged with serenity, her hair now streaked with white, her gaze calm like someone who has learned to accept what cannot be changed. She stayed at the school, now coordinating a music program for underprivileged children, the same dream she had once planted in her brother. Gabriel, for this part, had left the world of spotlights behind. He released one final independent album, without sponsors or big sales, just sincere lyrics, dedicated to his sister. The album was called Roots. It wasn't a commercial success, but it touched deeply those who heard it. It was his way of saying sorry in every verse.
Their relationship never went back to what it was before, but there was peace. Gabriel visited Helena often, helped with music lessons, and sometimes would just watch the children play out of tune, smiling as if every imperfect note was fate's way of nodding, "You can still start over." On a spring afternoon, a young woman arrived at the school, holding a little boy's hand. "Are you Professor Helena?" she asked. "Yes, I am. How can I help you?" The woman smiled. "My son wants to learn music. His father said you're the best teacher there is." Helena bent down to look the boy in the eyes and felt her heart stop for a moment. He had the same curious look Gabriel had when he was small. "What's your name, sweetheart?" The boy answered, "Leo. My dad is Gabriel Moraes." For a moment, Helena couldn't speak. Gabriel, who was watching from a distance, simply smiled, his eyes glistening. The boy hugged the small guitar, eager to learn. "My dad said you saved his life." Helena smiled tenderly. "Your father exaggerates. I just taught him how to listen for the right notes." The boy laughed, and she led him to the corner of the room. "Let's start from the beginning, okay? The most beautiful song in the world is always the first one you learn." As the boy clumsily plucked the strings, Gabriel watched from the doorway. The timid notes filled the room with a fragile but vibrant sound. Helena looked at her brother, and without a word, he understood. This moment was the reconciliation that words could never achieve. When the lesson ended, Leo ran to his father and showed him what he'd learned. "Look, Dad, Aunt Helena said music is a way to remember people we love." Gabriel knelt down, took his son's hands, and replied, "She's right, because music never dies. It just changes key." Outside, the sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. Helena stood in the doorway, watching father and son walk away together. The wind carried the distant sound of a guitar, the same melody Gabriel used to play when he was a child. And in that moment, she knew that everything, the pain, the loss, the loneliness, had been worth it. Because love, when it's real, never dies. It just finds new voices to keep singing. You see, sometimes the person we love the most is the one who teaches us the most, even if it's through pain. If this story touched you, if you believe that true love never dies, then subscribe now and ring the bell, because here, every week, I tell stories that make your heart remember why it's still worth feeling.